Committee. Those committee members are Freeman, Amobian, Malik, Baylor, and Lombardo. We do have all members present except for Amobian. Whenever you're ready, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to call the Budget and Finance Committee meeting to order. And if I could please have a motion to accept the minutes from the last meeting.
Motion to accept.
So moved.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please let it be known by saying aye.
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 All right, thank you very much. We're going to take things just a little bit out of order. We're going to save resolution, our number one item. We're going to save it for last, so we will begin with number 2, if that's all right with the committee. We do have an ordinance to make the annual appropriation for the current expenses, other expenditures, and the capital outlays of the City of Akron for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2022, and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is the annual appropriation, which we will be discussing both today and over the next 3 days individually with the various departments.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Questions, comments? Can we just continue to take time? You have a motion for time?
Motion for time.
Second.
You have a motion and a second. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Go ahead. You can do number 1 too.
What's that?
Go ahead and do number 1.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we will jump up to number 1 then. Resolution adopting an annual operating budget for the fiscal year 2022 and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is a tandem piece that goes with the ordinance. This is a resolution that we have to do by charter that just specifies that we are adopting an annual operating budget.
That is due by what date?
It is due by the end of March.
Okay, and we are planning this week, every day at 3 o'clock, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, of having our annual operating budget hearings, correct?
That is correct, yeah.
Okay, and obviously the committee is invited, as is all council members, and we will be talking, I'm sure, a whole lot this week. So, have a motion to take time on this?
Motion for time.
Second.
Motion for time and a second. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
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 All right, very good. Thank you. And we look forward to the next 3 coming days. Ordinance authorizing the mayor and/or his designee or designees to apply for, to accept if awarded, and to enter into an agreement with the State of Ohio Department of Education for after-school program grants for the 22-23 school year and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm going to have Mike Wheeler, who is our audit and budget supervisor, speak a little bit about this piece. And then we also have Desiree Bolden, who administers the program, that can speak a little bit about the specifics of the program.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good. Mr. Wheeler?
Hello, thank you. So this is our annual application for the renewal of the 21st Century Grant in partnership with the Akron Board of Education. This is for the 5th year and final year of a 5-year grant. And to apply for renewals as they are out there.
Very, very good. Questions or comments for Mr. Wheeler? Ms. Bolden, would you like to address us?
I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time hearing.
I said, would you like to address us? Anything to add?
We have, again, the opportunity to apply for these grants is a great privilege, and it's been such a strong partnership serving the kids of Akron. With it being a competitive grant, you know, it has its ups and downs, but we're forever hopeful and so appreciative of the continued support of you all as the City of Akron supporting the Akron Public School kids. So I'm open for any questions, or if you'd like to know plans we have for summer, which are going to be huge and great district-wide. With that, that's all I have to say, but thank you so much.
Thank you. And this is 5th year of a 5-year. Subsequent years, what kind of adjustments are made? What do things look like?
Based on history, this is a grant that we apply through the state of Ohio. So it's kind of determined after application what amount will be awarded, and during that time frame. It is renewed every year after that.
Okay, very good. Questions or comments from committee members or other council members And I'm looking to see if I see, okay, I do see Mr. Malik. I see your hand.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Bolden, could you talk a little bit about those summer programs that you mentioned?
Sure. We are ready to launch district-wide what's called our summer experience, and we are doing continuing what we started last summer, but a district-wide offerings from elementary, middle, and high school programs, and coordinated. So it's not just my funding stream or Akron After School's funding stream. It's combining all to offer programming of all sorts. So look for more to come. We have been working with an outside consultant to help us shore up, to help families navigate signing up kids and helping us to align and make sure that we're making a coordinated effort. It's a lot of work, but it's very exciting. It's going to be a great summer with all our partners.
It is really exciting. You mentioned a lot of different funding streams. What's the total cost that we're talking about when it comes to, I assume some of the federal ESSER funds are involved as well, lots of different.
Yeah. I don't know the total funding stream. I just know my part of it, but I have ESSER, 21st Century dollars. We have an expanding opportunity grant. So in the next 2 years, we are sitting very flush with dollars from the federal government with the ESSER dollars. We also have, and the city was an applicant, the $89 million grant, which we'll find out at the end of March, who, for our nonprofits who got awarded, who were, its focus is on summer learning and after school programs. So there's another opportunity for more funding depending on who got funded. And we'll know, I believe March 24th is the announcement date from ODE. And again, these are the federal dollars also that the state has to spend. And that was specifically geared to nonprofits supporting Akron Public School kids.
Thank you so much, Ms. Bolden. It's great to see that, we have resources on the city end. There's so many different resources on the school district end coming from the federal government as part of this economic recovery. I guess the one comment that I'd like to make is just that as we go forward, we really would like to see more of a collaborative use of our ARPA funds in concert with APS, because the issues that we're dealing with are the same whether a youth is in the building or not in the building. So I hope that we can be more collaborative beyond just this specific grant in how we use those funds around youth programming.
It's a great point, Shamus, and just to add to what you just said, we are very cognizant of the focus on youth violence, and that is one of the things that we are putting in with, particularly with our middle school and high school programming, to make sure that we are connected with the city focus and priorities.
Thank you.
And I see Ms. Amobian, please.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think, as you know, Desiree and Chair and everybody, we're here in Washington. Just finished listening to the President of the United States talk about all of these dollars that are coming to our communities. What I noticed in the budget information that we received, that Project GRAD is going to be doing some type of crime prevention program. Is this in any way connected to what you're doing, Desiree? I would hope that all these things are connected because you're pretty much serving the same children, but do you know anything about this program that's being provided by Project GRAD?
I don't know enough, but I can find out more. But I have to tell you that with this focus on being connected in terms of summer registration all across the district, we have made great headway into aligning all the work. We're kind of like herding cats here with all our different departments and being a large system. But we are really on track to be connected and coordinated. And in that also helps us serve families and kids so that families don't get confused on all the offerings that are out there. We're trying to coordinate it to simplify it, but also to make it relevant and easy to access. The coordination, Linda, that you're referring to of not knowing a program is that part of this whole registration system being in one house will naturally help us to be coordinated in many respects. Does that help? We are certainly aligning at this end of the aisle here.
It helps that you're working toward that, but I really would like to know more about what is going to happen before we pass our budget information. I know your program, this has to be into where? The federal government or Columbus by when? What you're requesting today?
So the money that we're requesting today is a continuation of 21st Century funds, which does not support Project Grad projects. So
Okay.
their funding stream is separate and different.
Right.
I can-
No, I understand that. I understand it's a separate funding stream. I just want to know the coordination piece because, again, this is a crime prevention program that Project Grad is sticking funds for. And again, I know we got 20-some thousand kids I know at Akron Public Schools, so you may be serving the same kids, you may not be, but it would be good to know if there's overlap and how you guys are working those things out, because I think that's important, that whatever dollars we're spending, that there's some coordination that you spoke of, and that, you can kind of tell us what you guys are working on together, because I think that's critically important. All the things we're doing, because I know that, as Chalmers indicated, school system got their ARPA dollars, we got our ARPA dollars, and certainly we want to do whatever we can because we're talking about the same citizenry. But I just want to make sure that there's some real good coordination going on and we can begin to see results. So if you learn more, let us know more because we need to know how these programs are aligned and how because everybody's looking for outcomes. And I think we all are looking for the same thing, showing that the kids are making some progress because there are some kids that have lost a lot of ground with the pandemic. Yeah.
And so if I could refer back to the centralization and the registration that we're doing, gives us a much more ability to put our fingers on what's actually going on throughout the entire district, but also how they align. And just as reference, the Project Grad serves the high school students. The elementary Akron after school portion is the 21st Century dollars are for elementary students only. So there's that difference.
Yeah, but I think they're serving more than just high school kids. I have to look at those numbers again because she's been talking about
They do have a bridge to kindergarten program that's operating this summer, and that we are definitely aligned with for summer learning, for sure.
Okay. Thank you very much. It's certainly appreciate you,
Welcome.
and there's no question about the work that you guys are doing. Thank you.
I'll be sure to get information for you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
When's the application due?
I'll get back to you on that one.
Okay, I was asking for the purpose of, do we pass it now, do we place it on consent? That was my sole reason for asking.
I think consent would be fine.
Okay, very good. I do not see any other questions. If I'm missing anyone, yell in your microphone.
Yell.
Mr. Fusco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Desiree Bolden, thank you for everything you've done throughout the years. And I'm really happy to hear about the coordination piece that you're working on, which is something we've talked about for years and years and years in terms of having that where everyone is kind of on the same page. I assume this is going to drill down to the individual student as well. Is that accurate, or that's a lot of what we've talked about in the past?
I didn't catch that last part.
The coordination piece that we were, that you were talking about, and it sounds like still in development, but even the coordination with regards to teachers and so on and so forth with regards to the students themselves, and kind of like watching the development over time. This is something we've talked about in the past. I was wondering if it's going to go that far.
So I think I got the gist of it, Jeff. Tell me if I don't answer correctly. One of the greatest things about having the new superintendent, Christine Fowler-Mack, come on board, she has brought with her a great emphasis on out-of-school time programming and our alignment of all of the things that affect our students and families. So we're working with an outside consultant group. There's two of them, and I know the one name is ILO, and I cannot put my finger on the other one right now. So we have an outside organization that is helping us. Oh, and we also have the Wallace Foundation, which is a huge foundation that is helping support. They picked Akron Public Schools to consult for free. So we are in weekly meetings with the Wallace Foundation and with other national, throughout the nation, other cities and schools on learning what are best practice, high quality, implementation, even going down to simple as what do you call your program. So that has been really exciting, and the coordinated effort will continue. So last summer we called 1.0. This summer we're calling 2.0. So next year at this time we're beyond 3.0, and we're learning a lot. So it is very exciting, and the coordination effort, yes, to your first point, has been a long time coming, and we're very excited to be at the table and included.
Thank you.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah. Well, especially with regards to the comments from everyone here, that there's quite a thirst, I believe, with council in terms of just kind of watching what's going on, and wherever we could lend a hand. We used to have the summer reading program that a lot of folks had helped out with, including yourself, in terms of that particular program. But just wanted to, like I said, if you could please keep us posted as you progress moving forward. We would really like to keep in tune to what's going on and support however we can. Thanks.
I will for sure do that.
Ms. Connor.
Thank you, Chairman Freeman. Just a little clarification. Project Grad did receive an ARPA under the youth violence. It is for 50 students through the summer, grades 8 to 12, 25 at Bookdale High School and 25 at East.
Thank you. Any other comments? All right. We talked about a motion to place this on the consent agenda. Would anyone like to offer that?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. All in favor, please let it be known by saying aye.
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 Okay, opposed, like sign. All right, we will call the meeting to a close at 3:20. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Fricker. I apologize.
Yeah, sorry. I do have a presentation, which is our kind of our budget overview that we typically present before the individual.
That would be
council
why you
budget
have this whole row of people
That is
back here.
correct, yeah. In fact, as first order of business, I'd like to introduce the audit and budget staff. They're led by Cindy Donnell, who is our audit and budget manager. Mike Wheeler is our audit and budget supervisor to my right here. We have Monica Four, our newest member, our newest employee in audit and budget. Liz Clow, Teresa Klein, Zachary Hewitt, and Kashik Saha.
Welcome, each and every one of you.
So they are the people that are responsible for a lot of the content that we're going to review here over the next 3 days.
Look forward to getting to know you better.
So what I would like to do is share my screen, and I do have an overview. I believe I sent this out to the entire council on Friday. Let me share my screen here. Okay, can everyone see my screen? It looks like it is up on the Zoom. Okay. And let me make sure I can go back and forth here. Okay, so the first thing I would like to cover for the 2022 operating budget are the assumptions that we used in preparation, and many of these are related to the general fund, which, as you all know, is our most important fund. It encompasses the operations of all our city departments in one way or another. Now, many others have other funding, but all of our departments do have some funding through the general fund. So our first assumption is that our income tax revenues are going to decline by 3%.
From last year?
From last year, okay. Yes. So this is due to, as everyone's well aware, some of the work from home impact that we anticipate seeing in 2022. The good news is that we did have a very good year last year with our income taxes, so we were up about 10%, and that was a variety of some new businesses that we did have that began operating last year that provided some increases in our withholding taxes. I also think we just saw some general increases just due to some of the wage inflation that's been happening out there in the marketplace, and then we also saw some net profit returns from some of our companies. So it was a combination of those things that we did see a decent uptick in our income tax revenues last year. But we do anticipate a decline in those revenues this year. So far, our gross revenues are kind of holding steady. In fact, we're up a little bit, but then we are seeing our refunds tick up a little bit too, which is what we anticipated. So I would say it's kind of really too early to tell what the overall trend is, but we do anticipate a slight decline in 2022. Our local government fund revenues, and that's what we receive from the state of Ohio, we expect those to remain stable in 2022. We did see a little bit of an uptick in those last year due to the recovery. So those went up about $900,000 last year. We would expect a similar amounts this year. Our property taxes also, we expect to remain stable, but that's another source that, due to the revaluation that was done back in 2020, we did see an uptick in those revenues last year, but we expect them to remain stable this year. There will be no water or sewer service rate increases in 2022. Now, what there will be is a curb service increase, and that's something that, due to the legislation we passed a few years ago, goes up with the municipal cost index. Because that went up almost 10%. Those rates went up 50% for most customers, and then for homestead customers, they went up about 25 cents. So we do anticipate an increase in curb service rates. We do anticipate receiving the second half of our ARPA funds. We'll receive those sometime this summer, which should be about $72 million. So we got the first half last year, we'll get the second half this year. And then those funds will be used, so we're using about $8.5 million of those funds to balance our general fund budget in 2022. So without those funds, our general fund revenues are approximately $180 million, and we'll see that our general fund budget is about $188.5 million. So we're utilizing some of those ARPA funds to balance the general fund. On the expenditure side, we are budgeting for all employees, and now this is the budget amount, and I'll explain this here, a 3.25% cost of living increase for all employees. Now, we are still negotiating with 3 of our bargaining units, so those could potentially be different amounts. I had to pick something for our budget, and because we already have an agreement with our ASME bargaining unit, I picked 3.25% because that is what the agreement is with them. That will also apply to our non-bargaining employees. So this budget reflects 3.25% for all employees, but again, we are still negotiating with 3 of our bargaining units. Healthcare costs, we did see a rise in our claims last year. So as you know, we are self-insured, so we pay our medical claims, and then we charge back each department a fixed amount per full-time employee to cover those costs. So we've increased that monthly charge back from $1,700 to $1,750 in 2022. In terms of our staffing, and I'll have a lot more detail on our staffing, but a big part of it is that we are going to have what looks like 2 fire classes in 2022. We just had one come on early, and then we expect doing another one midsummer. And then we are in the process of doing a police class right now, which should be somewhere around 30 or 31 officers. One other thing that we are doing in 2022 for the first time in a number of years is that we are going to offer a purchase of leave to all city employees, which means that they will be able to sell some of their sick and vacation time, or really their vacation time, well, sick too, up to 80 hours. So this is something that we haven't done in a while. It does save the city money because, you know, we are buying those hours at whatever their current rate is, as opposed to when they leave the city where they would likely be at a higher rate. So it does save the city money in the long run. It's something that our employees, you know, have asked for. You know, so we are gonna do that this year. We're going to purchase up to 80 hours of leave time from our employees. And my estimate on that is that we will have about a 60% participation rate. So some employees will sell all 80 hours. Some employees won't sell any. Some will sell something less than the 80 hours. So we don't know what those are. That's up to them. You know, they don't have to sell the hours if they don't want.
You anticipate
60% participation is what is in the budget. You know, it could go higher than that, it could be less than that, but that was my estimate.
So how does, can we ask questions now, or you want us to wait?
Let's roll through the points, Ms. Amobian, and then we can come back.
Right.
Okay. Would that be okay? Thank you.
Yeah, and
I
then,
can hear you, what did you say?
and then finally, and there's a special slide in the presentation about this, the ARPA funding that we have appropriated in this budget is about $65 million. And there's a detailed breakdown that we'll cover later.
Did you say you want us to hold the question, Mr. Chair?
I'm fine. You can do questions.
Feel free.
I can't hear you.
Mr. Chair, is your mic on? Because that's how they're able to hear you, is through your microphone. Thanks.
I apologize for that. Yes, Ms. Amobian, please.
I can ask the question now?
Mm-hmm. Yes, you may.
Oh, okay, thank you, I'm sorry, I couldn't understand. Couple questions, Mr. Fricker. In the revenue part, help me understand, do we benefit from this crazy housing market that we're experiencing now, where people are buying houses over and above the price? Is there any benefit to the city? I know the county gets most of that, but how do we benefit, or do we?
I mean, I'm having trouble hearing.
We're having a little trouble hearing on this end. I think the question was if people are paying maybe above normal market price, how is the city or county benefiting from that? I mean, my first thought is we benefit when, you know, based upon whatever the county's evaluation is for the property.
Oh, okay, in terms of, okay. So in terms of our property tax,
Yeah, our property tax is based upon the valuation of the property, not necessarily what it sells for, correct?
That is correct. It's based on what the, the county fiscal office goes through, and every 6 years they do a full revaluation, and that's what happened back in 2020. And then every 3 years they do kind of a less intensive revaluation of those properties. So when they did the 2020 revaluation, the assessed valuation, and that's the value of all the property, went up about 10%.
So the fact that a house is on the books for 150 grand, a bidding war happens, it sells for 180, there's no immediate effect upon our city budget because of that.
No, there isn't. Yeah.
Am I correct? Is that what you were asking, Ms. Amobian?
Yes, because houses are selling off the charts. Whatever they are listing the price for, they are higher than that, much higher. And I was just wondering, does that change for us as a city in terms of gaining more revenue?
Yeah, so it does. So we did see some of that impact, last year with those increased collections.
Okay.
My other question I have is, when you purchase sick time or leave from employees, that just takes that off the books, or how does that work?
That's correct.
How does that?
Yeah, so it takes it off the books. They, so if they choose to sell 80 hours of sick leave, we would reduce their bank by that 80 hours, and then they would get, 80 times whatever their hourly rate is in terms of a payment.
Okay. Because when an employee leaves the system, when they retire, they only get paid for X number of sick days. Is that correct? You don't get all of that time.
So it depends on, there's a couple different methodologies for how that works. So some of the employees are, yes, they are capped at 1,000 hours of sick leave. Then there's other employees that are on what's called paid leave, and those are not capped except for cabinet and managers.
And if they leave, we have to pay them for all the time they have on the books? Those that we have to pay for all?
I think you might have to repeat that, Ms. Amobian. We're having a little hard time over here.
I can't hear you. I'm not sure why my volume is so bad. Anyway, I was just trying to figure out how we work that. Don't worry about it. I can always ask later.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
Okay, let me continue on with the next. See if I can get out of here. There we go.
Mr. Chair, I had a question, if I may.
Okay, sorry about that. Yes, Mr. Malik.
Thank you. Are you guys able to hear me okay?
Yes, you're clear.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Fricker, going to the revenue, and if we can go back one slide, you said $8.5 million, I think, from ARPA is going to be used for revenue replacement and to fill a hole in the general fund. I guess, a couple of questions. Is the intent that roughly this amount will be used in future years under ARPA? And then, to that point, like $8 million is a pretty significant gap. Obviously, our reserves are not much more than that, a few times more than that. What is the thought then beyond, ARPA?
So I think that in terms of whether this will be an annual amount of, I think that remains to be seen. I think that we need to look and see how the tax collections come in. This is a forecast for 2022. I think that we will monitor the tax, and this is what the ARPA money is there for. And there's a revenue replacement component to the ARPA funds, and we're using it for that purpose. So in terms of the gap, one of the things you have to keep in mind is, as I said, we're showing a 3% decline in the income tax. So that tax is going down $3 million instead of going up $3 million. So if you think about that, that's about a $6 million swing which is, you know, the vast majority of that gap that we're talking about. So again, that's what that's why these revenue replacement dollars were given to us, is for this purpose.
Thank you. That is a helpful explanation. I guess, do we have any kind of sense over, you know, if we're going to continue to lose income tax, you know, ARPA is going to last us for a couple of years, but we're going to have a pretty big gap after that. Have we thought about how we're going to address that over the long term?
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's something that we need to monitor. We need to monitor the levels of our staffing, and, you know, to the extent that, you know, come 2024, when we look at our staffing and we look at what our anticipated income tax revenues are, then we'll have to make decisions about, you know, what our staffing levels going forward would be.
Thank you. And then just final question, would it be possible to have the monthly income tax revenues so far in 2022 emailed to us?
Yes, we can get those distributed, yes.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, any other questions? I'm going to continue on to, and I'm not going to spend too much time, just due to the implementation of Workday, we've always given let me just scroll down here. We've always given kind of an overview of how the accounts appear on the budget documents that we distributed. Those have changed slightly just due to the way that we've categorized things in our Workday system. So now we kind of have three different major buckets of funds. We have our wages and benefits, which are all the labor costs that we have. And then we have discretionary accounts, which are, you know, some of the more non-contractual type things that we do. And then we have our non-discretionary accounts, which are contractual obligations, our debt service, so things that are kind of costs that we've already incurred that are kind of ongoing obligations. One of the nice things that Workday has allowed us to do is because we group things this way, it's afforded us the opportunity to have our managers actually manage their budget somewhat themselves. So what we've allowed them to do is say within the discretionary area, you know, if they want to move money from supplies down to training or travel, they have that capability of going in through the system itself and doing those adjustments themselves.
Does that take considerable burden off of your staff?
It does take some off, yeah. So now that, you know, the staff, they still approve those, so they all go through, there's an approval system, but it allows that, you know, that entry where they want to move money from one account to another to be done by the division. So one of the benefits of Workday and that structure that we've set up. Okay, on the next page, we'll talk a little bit about the general fund and the, you know, what we saw last year. So we came in basically flat last year. We maintained our, there we go. So we did maintain our fund balance, which is approximately $28 million last year. We were able to do that somewhat with utilizing the remainder of the CARES Act dollars that we had from the previous year. So, you know, some of the numbers that you'll see here reflect some of the staffing costs that normally would have been incurred by the general fund, but we were able to charge to the CARES Act fund. And that's why you see the labor amount going up so much between 2020 and 2021, because we were able to use some of that, especially in 2020, some of those labor costs were charged off to the CARES Act fund. In terms of our revenue in the general fund, as I mentioned, we anticipate the tax going down a little bit, but then we do see some recovery in our intergovernmental revenue, and that is both the casino tax, which recovered nicely, went up about $1 million this year, and as well as the local government fund. So a little bit of an increase there. The charges for services, that's largely due to, as I mentioned, the curb service fee that went up with the municipal cost index. as well as we do expect a little bit of recovery in some of our smaller service charges that we collect. So for instance, our Recreation Bureau, with COVID declining, we anticipate a little bit of an increase in our recreation activities, so some of those revenues should recover a little bit more. And that's also the case with our license and fees, and those are largely due to the fees that we collect in the courts. So we expect that to recover a little bit in 2022 as well. And then the miscellaneous revenues largely reflect, the amounts that, that large increase is largely due to the amount that we're bringing in from the ARPA fund to cover that gap. And then on the expense side, you do see a little bit of an increase in both the wages and benefits. Again, those numbers are skewed a little bit because of, some of the other funding sources that we're using for our safety force costs in the past couple years. Okay, any questions about that?
And so the benefits, does that number we're using there, does that reflect the $50 per person increase?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, I can see that.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Abobian, the reason I am not calling on folks is because when Mr. Fricker shares his screen, I can't see everybody on my iPad, so just wanted to let you know that. So please.
No problem, I just,
proceed,
can you go
thank
back
you.
to that previous slide, Mr. Fricker?
Yes, please proceed.
Okay, all right. The next slide is one that we include every year, and it just kind of shows the breakdown of both the revenues and expenses in the general fund. As you can see, two things stand out on the revenue side. Obviously, our taxes are the, by far the biggest component of what funds our general fund, and you can see what it's funding. It's primarily labor, so. As I mentioned, all of our departments have some operations in the general fund, and the vast majority of what we're funding are the labor costs in the general fund. Okay, I'm not going to go through too much detail here. These are the budgeted gross revenues by fund, and you can see the general fund at the top. A couple of the highlights, you'll see the ARPA funding that is represented with the various purpose funding, which is about halfway down the page is Fund 2330. So that's where the ARPA funding will show up. And then on the expense side, again, this is where the numbers that we'll be discussing in detail over the next few days. The total budget is about $772 million. And the large portions of that increase are really due to three funds. So it's the increases in the general fund, it's the court special projects fund. So as you know, that we are about to undertake the building of the new courthouse. We've gone through the process of issuing the bonds for that, and then part of that was contributing the amounts that we've accumulated in that special project fund over the years and contributing to the construction of that courthouse. So we've already dispersed $13 million from that towards the construction of the courthouse. So that fund has a large increase due to that outlay of that balance that built up in that fund. And then finally, the biggest portion of the increase is due to the ARPA funds being appropriated in 2022.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Yes, Mr. Malik?
Mr. Fricker, on some of those funds, there's the notation DW. What does that stand for?
So that stands for department-wide. So it all depends. It just is how we, whether we appropriate those funds by the fund as a whole, or we do it department by department. So it's really just kind of a naming thing on those funds. So that just means department-wide, which means that on the appropriation ordinance, it's not broken down by department, it's just one amount for the entire fund.
Thank you.
Okay, whoops. Oh, I know why this is. I'm going to share a different document now. Okay, so unfortunately, I think my computer's being confused because things are shifting from portrait to landscape, and it doesn't like that. Let me try one more thing here. Wow. Okay, well, let me show one other thing then.
Mr. Fricker, I have the same document open on my computer. Would you want me to try to share it?
Sure. And then go down to, okay, so here we go. Yeah, what I want to work through now are a big focus of this budget was to restore some of the staffing that we have lost over the years. You know, the impact of COVID on our workforce last year and the year before has been pretty substantial. And there were departments that you know, desperately needed additional staffing just in order to maintain the current service levels that we've been providing. And this is primarily focused in, you know, really the more public-facing departments such as, you know, police, fire, service, neighborhoods, and safety. You're going to see that the vast majority of the new employees are in there. But then we also did, just due to some of our needs, so for instance, you know, we'll start off with the Human Resources Department. We're adding 2 employees, one of which is a recruiter who recently started, and this is just due to you know, the way the workplace is now and the difficulty in hiring people, and you know, we've just felt like we needed some additional assistance in recruiting people to come work for the city. So we have a new employee there, and then we're actually going to hire a second recruiter specifically for police and fire, and you'll see 50% of that person each within police and fire. So we have 2 recruiters to help us hire, you know, for those positions. And as I said, 1 dedicated directly to police and fire. And then in the finance department, while we didn't add to our total count, we were able to hire a few additional positions and then not fill some others. So we kind of shifted things around. Our total count remains the same, but we were able to add some staff in a couple key areas. The law department is adding what really amounts to 2 positions, 1 prosecutor, and then they're also adding a public records technician. Public records has become a very time-consuming task. So we have both within the law department and within our police department, with some of the public records requests that they've added some additional staff there as well to deal with that, you know, the compiling of those records, which is very time-consuming. Within the council clerk's office itself, we've added 1 council aide at the request of the council staff. Okay, Sean, I'm just going to go to the next page.
No, wait, hold on a minute. Go back to that page, please. What is this? I see notation saying you're moving the chief of staff position to council budget, and then you're adding council aide, and then you're moving chief of staff position from clerk's office.
Yeah, so all that is it's just, Joan Williams' position. Typically, there were three, the non-council members were all shown on the council side, and then everyone else was shown on the clerk side. We're showing Joan Williams' position on the council side as well. So there's 14 there. So it's really not an additional position. It's just we're showing it with council instead of with the clerk's office.
I don't understand. Why is that?
That's the way that it was set up when she came on board, and because she, because she was hired in a different way than the typical clerk staff, she was set up under the council itself. So, that's how we're showing that position.
Mr. Chair, I can see that President Somerville has her hand raised.
Okay, I could not see that. Yes, President Somerville?
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to help answer Councilwoman Mobian's questions. When we met with Budget and Finance, for whatever reason, they did have the Chief of Staff position under Council Clerk, and it always should have been under City Council. So that's why we asked him to make the adjustment.
Why does it matter? Because these are positions that are under council.
Yeah.
It doesn't, I don't know if it necessarily matters, but again, it is City Council's Chief of Staff, not Clerk's office, so.
Yeah, I would point out it's all general fund money, so it doesn't really matter. In fact, they will appear under the same budget line in the appropriation ordinance. That's all consolidated into one. So there's a general fund amount for council, as a whole, both for the clerk's office and for the council itself. So it really, in effect, it doesn't really matter.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, please proceed, Mr. Frick.
Okay, so there were really no major changes till we get down to safety. So safety, and this has been something that we've been slowly addressing over the past several years, but we felt like we needed to add some additional positions again this year, and that is to our 911 call center. So they've had a lot of staffing challenges there, so we're adding 5 dispatchers to that operation, which should cut down a little bit on the overtime and some of the workload that they've had to endure over the past year or two. So we hope that will alleviate and make it a little bit easier to staff that operation. And then within public service,
Mr. Fricker?
Yes.
You said 911, did you mean 311?
No, I mean 911, yeah.
I thought that was a county.
No, that's, we have our own dispatchers for police and fire. Yeah, okay. So this is the 911 call center. Yeah.
Do they work a normal shift of 8 to 5 or 5 to, what is the normal shift?
They have multiple shifts. Yeah, so.
Yeah, but I mean, do they work more than 8 hours? Because it's got to be a stressful job.
Correct, and that's why we felt that it was appropriate to add some additional staff here. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wondering if that meant that you're going to.
Yeah, I'll let Captain Laughlin, when we have the hearing, he can address some of how the staffing will work.
Thank you.
Okay, in service, the additional employees really fall primarily into 2 areas. One is in parks maintenance. So this was a combination of eliminating some contractual costs that we have by hiring city staff to do some of the mowing in our city-owned properties, as well as we've had difficulty hiring. We used to have a lot of part-time staff that perform some of those functions. That's been very difficult to hire part-time staff, recently. So the decision was made to, we're basically going to eliminate the part-time staff and then have full-time staff that takes on that. So it's replacing part-time staff with full-time staff.
We will still have some seasonals, though.
Not in parks.
Okay.
Yeah, not in parks.
Okay, thank you.
And then the other major area, and this is kind of similar, is in our Sanitation Division, some additional employees to handle the additional routes that we took on when we eliminated the private contractor, as well as a similar situation where we had a lot of temporary staffing for the sanitation service workers. We're going to try to hire full-time staff for that just because of the difficulty in getting those employees. Okay, next page. Then finally, so fire, this reflects adding 8 additional firefighters to get our count up to about 371 firefighters. And as I said, it looks like there will be 2 classes this year of firefighters. And then with police, a similar thing, that we're adding 5 police officers, but then they're also adding some civilian staff, a crime analyst and accounts analyst to deal with some of the grants that they have, 3 administrative assistants, and they're largely dedicated towards the additional public records request duties that they have. And then for both police and fire, as I said, we're having half of a recruitment and retention specialist charged that will dedicate their duties just to police and fire staffing. Then in the Department of Neighborhoods, I know there's been a lot of discussion recently about having some additional staff dedicated to our housing compliance. So we've added 4 positions for that, and I will let Mr. Greger kind of speak to where those people will be deployed, but I know that that's been something that council has wanted, something that the administration has wanted, so that's something that we have incorporated into this budget, as well as a couple code compliance inspectors for our nuisance division. So those people will be out there to address high weed, litter, those types of things. So some additional staff for those kind of, just kind of those aesthetic things that we see throughout the city. And then finally, I'm not going to go into the OID has a number of split positions. Their staffing is remaining relatively stable. We did transfer a couple positions. One of the positions I put in finance, which will be dedicated towards working on the capital budget, but we transferred that position from OID to finance. And then we also moved a landscape technician that used to be housed under OID, and they're going to be an urban forestry specialist under the Parks Maintenance Division. So that's the person that's primarily focused on some of the tree work that we do here in the city of Akron. And then finally, we have 8 positions, and they span really 3 different departments that we're adding, that we're funding specifically with ARPA dollars. So we've already hired our violence prevention coordinator. They will reside in the mayor's office. And then we have 4 staff related to doing the lead line replacements. They'll be part of water. And then some housing rehab specialists that will be in our Department of Neighborhoods. So you can see that our total count that we're budgeting is shown as 2,000 employees. That's up from 1,942 that we budgeted last year. Now, that middle number that you're seeing right there, that's our current count. So one thing I want to, as I always say, when we show the staffing counts each year, we're showing 2,000 people budgeted. We will never approach that number. We always have, at any given time, about 100 vacant positions. So my guess is that we'll be somewhere around the 1,900 number at any given time once these new positions come on. Okay, and then finally, let's go to the last page.
Mr. Chair, I had a question, if I may.
Yes, Mr. Malik.
Thank you. Mr. Fricker, when we look at, you mentioned some of the tree work that the city has, and I know a number of us on council have, issues in our ward where there's a backlog of street trees or other issues that need to be dealt with. Can you talk about, is this increasing capacity to deal with those trees?
It's providing a resource to look at those issues, I would say that. I'm going to let Mr. Malish, when we have our parks budget, address how that position will be used.
All right, thank you.
And then finally, this is a detail of the funding that is going to be appropriated for the American Rescue Plan Act. So it's a breakdown, and it's broken down by, the labor pieces, and then the other budget, which represents basically the supplier expenses. So it's separated into the various buckets. A lot of this is mirrors what was adopted in the capital budget. We are just appropriating those dollars. The total amount ends up being about $65.2 million. So any questions?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good, thank you. Now, I'm trying to understand what is our role with the House 330. I love all the programs and things that the James Foundation is doing, but I'm trying to understand, because we're already doing the I Promise. Where's that housing project? It's one of those at the top under housing. That's the new affordable housing that's being built on Maple, is that correct?
That's correct. There are 3 different components of the new affordable housing.
All 3 of those are with the James Foundation?
No, I don't believe they are.
The I Promise is the one on Maple. The Beaver Street housing project, what is that?
So I'm going to let some of these questions be addressed when we actually do the, by our integrated development department, when we do the budget hearings on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. They can speak to these a lot more in detail than I can.
Will this be covered tomorrow or Wednesday? Because Wednesday's going to be a problem for me because I'll be flying back home. So is there anybody that can answer that question for me today?
Oh, yes, so this would be tomorrow. But any questions, so, I mean, if you have a specific question, as we always do, we can, take those in and kind of respond, throughout the week and next week.
If you could just talk about the housing issues, if you don't want to do it today, just make sure I get it addressed before we pass the budget. And under the access to health care and social services, please talk specifically about what does the House 330 have to do with health care. I realize what it may have to do with social services, but you do realize that that building is going to have a lot of merchants in it who will be paying rent, I hope. So there are lots of ways for revenue stream. So I just want to know more about why we are putting money there. And I know the commitment to the affordable housing piece, but I just want to answer to those questions. Because keep in mind now, the school district is going to get their own ARPA dollars. And regardless of how this arrangement is set up, this school still belongs to the Akron Public School system. You know, these are Akron Public School children. And these are kids that are being educated through a special program with Akron Public Schools. And I want to know more about the housing that we're going to do for our citizens in terms of how many we're going to rehab. Because I see a lot of dollars here, but I don't understand why we have to do this. So those are the questions I have. So whether I may not be on Wednesday, I will try, but I think I'll be in the air coming back home.
And we'll, those questions will be answered this week. And I know not everybody can be here every night. So, Mr. Fricker, I think the way we've done in the past, you see questions, you know that you're not going to be there that evening. Right. You'll obviously welcome those questions. And I may have already had folks tell me, I can't be there every night. So, okay, make sure you get your questions in. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chair, I had a question.
Yes, Mr. Malik.
Thank you. Mr. Fricker, there's a $5 million line item for premium pay for city employees. Can you just talk a little bit about that?
So we're still working through the specifics of that, but the idea is that we'll be looking to provide premium pay to the extent it's eligible under the ARPA dollars to our, to the employees that are eligible to receive it. So that's something that we're looking at. So we've set aside a bucket of $5 million for that.
And I guess, is that like are we thinking that it's retrospective or that it's for the future or what have you?
We're still determining how that's going to work in accordance. We've been kind of looking at what the guidelines are, looking what other cities are doing, because it's still so new, there isn't a lot of track record on what other cities have done with that yet. So we're kind of waiting to see what the best way to structure that is.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I have one other question, please.
Yes, ma'am.
We have experienced a huge eviction rate as other major cities. Are we looking to see what other cities have done? Because since I've been here, I've heard a lot of cities actually doing 1,500 or more different programs where they're helping people with their rent and other things with the ARPA dollars. Do we have anything in this budget that speaks to what we're doing to help people that are facing eviction or anything about the eviction problem we're having?
I don't believe there's any dollars in any of these specific projects. I know that the county did have a lot of funding in the previous round for those purposes.
Okay. Will you do me a favor, please, as you talk to cities about what they're doing regarding premium pay for employees, can you kind of explore what other cities are doing around eviction? Because I've heard a lot of different kinds of programs that people have been using. And I know it's always something that's a challenge, because the larger your city, the larger the number of evictions you will have. But I'd just like for us to at least look at that problem and see, are there ways that we might be able to do something to help people? But just ask the questions for me, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, and that that pretty much concludes the overview.
Okay. Very good. Well, we will be singing Kumbaya for the next 3 evenings. And we just invite everybody to be, Ms. Biviano, is this also going to be available through Zoom? Okay, and that link, has that link been sent out yet?
It has not yet, but I will send it tomorrow morning.
Okay,
it'll be the same link for each day. And yes, they have the option of attending in chambers or coming in.
Okay, So everybody online has heard that there will be a link sent out tomorrow morning for our budget hearings. And if we have nothing else, I would ask at this time that we please adjourn at, what time is it? 4:13 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you.
That is our final committee meeting of the day. Council will meet at 7 p.m. tonight.